Howdy, friends. Max Mogren out here in nature, looking to share a perfect little moment with all of you. I spent the last couple hours cruising up this mountain, and now here I am at the top in some late afternoon light. Not a breath of wind, not any sign of other people around. Perfect temperature, sitting here with my gloves off in the sun, loving life. I love getting out into nature, getting away from society and all the systems that we live within in our day-to-day lives, trying to navigate this wild and ever-changing world we live in. And the last year, man, what a crazy year, huh? People like to blame 2020, but really, the world's always changing. And in my opinion, it's changing for the better, all in all. But there are a lot of things we need to look out for. And one of my favorite things about going backcountry skiing is it gives you a lot of time to reflect on yourself, myself, and the rest of the world. And today I've been thinking a lot about where my opinions have come from. Anybody that follows my work knows I'm very opinionated, I'm very outspoken, and I'm very critical of the government, large corporations, the so-called technocratic oligarch billionaire types like Bill Gates and Elon Musk, and the medical establishment. In the era of COVID, I think I'm in an especially unique position to share insights into the medical system because of my background. Okay, people are quick to say, if you speak out about these lockdowns, this medical martial law, and these mask orders, people are quick to say, "Are you a public health expert? Are you an epidemiologist? Are you a doctor?" No, I'm not. I had the choice of whether or not to become a doctor, but I chose not to because back in the early 2000s, 2004, 2005, 15 years ago, 16 years ago, I had already come to realize that there are serious fundamental flaws with the medical system in the United States. And that right now, this era of COVID, this era where the medical system, the supposed needs of the medical system trump freedom, liberty, personal choice, and such. It's a very dangerous precedent. And I'd like to share a little background on myself so you can understand where I'm coming from and why I think that my opinion in these regards is accurate. Now, you're entitled to your own opinion, but if you're watching this video, you must care at least a little bit about mine. And my interactions with the medical system go back my entire life. My parents believed completely in Western medicine. I got all my immunizations as a kid. I went to the doctor, uh, you know, totally normal upbringing. And when I went away to college, I still remember, I thought maybe I should be a doctor, not because I really wanted to be one, but just because I wanted to find a job where I could make a lot of money, use my brain, be well respected in the community, and help people, right? Those are I think the four primary reasons why people go into medicine. And I was no different. Early in college, I was studying communication because I was fascinated by the media, and in high school, I had learned basic video editing and storyboarding and whatnot, multimedia. We called it media arts. Excellent class I had at this excellent high school I attended. And, quickly realized that due to these wonderful professors I had, they made it abundantly clear that the mainstream media was being controlled by only a handful of massive corporations, and it was inherently biased. So I realized pretty quickly I didn't want to be a part of that and went into philosophy. Still got a degree in communication, also got a degree in philosophy. After a couple years of philosophy, I solidified my belief that I wanted to become a doctor, and so I took all of the med school prerequisites. I worked in a medical setting in several jobs, most notably in a retirement home, in an old folks home, full time for a year and a half. And I did really well in all my medical school prerequisites. I aced the MCAT. I got a 34R, which put me in the 95th to 98th percentile of people who took the MCAT that year. So odds are I scored higher on the MCAT than your doctor, than your local physician. Not bragging, just saying I understand the fundamentals. And I do have, thanks to an excellent upbringing, excellent educational opportunities, a degree in communication, a degree in philosophy, and attending medical school. I actually went to medical school for a while, but I left. And the reason why I left is because all the way back then, 2004, 2005, I had already become aware that the medical system was fundamentally flawed and pseudoscientific. Uh, the way I came to discover that was through my senior honors thesis at college. I called it Fighting Attention Deficit Disorder, Fighting ADHD with Media Literacy was the title of the paper. It was about 80 pages long, well sourced. And in order to write that paper, I had to take my studies from communication, had to take my studies from philosophy, and my studies of medicine to incorporate all those into writing this thesis that essentially argued that the that we had we talk about the pandemic now. Well, there's still an ongoing epidemic of so-called attention deficit hyperactivity disorder and other disorders like autism seriously impacting the youth. Well, back then I was really interested in attention deficit disorders, so-called attention deficit disorders, because I might have been able to qualify for one, right? If I hadn't had such loving and free and forward thinking and logical parents, the fact that I was a really high energy, inquisitive, critical thinking child would have put me pretty far up there in the realm of attention deficit hyperactivity disorder diagnoses. And I thank God that I wasn't, because if I had been, I would have been diagnosed speed. That's right, speed. Amphetamines. Ritalin is an amphetamine. It's really not good, not a good thing to be giving children, especially young children, but anybody for that matter, fundamentally rewiring their brains. And at the time I was writing this paper, I was utterly shocked. I found this fundamental flaw in the reasoning surrounding attention deficit disorders because at the time, the so-called scientific consensus, the expert opinion of the medical establishment, was that attention deficit hyperactivity disorder was genetic. Okay, they said it was genetic. And I found that to be just patently untrue, blatantly false. Obviously, people's environment had something to do with their development of attention deficit disorders, whether that be, their diet, the amount of time they spend in front of a TV, the amount of time their parents spend in front of a TV, the creativity and imaginativeness of their play as a child, the number of books they read. So many factors go into the development of the human brain. So many environmental factors, so many, nurture as opposed to nature factors go into human development that I found it just utterly absurd that the scientific consensus and the expert opinion of Western medicine was that it was a genetic disorder. Because having a basic understanding of genetics, I knew it was impossible that somehow the genetics of all humanity, or the large percentage of American kids, especially boys, had suddenly had the same genetic mutation simultaneously and had become attention deficit, right? Utterly absurd. So as I was studying that, right then and there, I started to see the light went on. I said, nope, not all is not as it seems. There are some serious flaws here. And when I was applying to med schools, I actually, I got into 2 of the 3 I applied to, but I was really pretty proud of myself because I got a callback. I got interviewed by the Mayo Clinic School of Medicine, which only takes 30 or 40 students every year. It's one of the most exclusive med schools in the world, at one of the best, so-called best hospitals in the world. So I was pretty happy that they had called me in. And I remember during my interview, my interviewer, a doctor there, asked me about my honors thesis, and I told her straight up that I told her my opinion on attention deficit disorders, and she wholeheartedly disagreed with me, and we had a little discussion. You could call it an argument, you could call it a scientific disagreement. And because I had just been studying all this stuff, I just read a dozen books on the topic and had my logic and reasoning skills, thanks to an excellent education, she wasn't able to win that argument. And I probably shouldn't have argued with my, admissions interviewer at the Mayo Clinic School of Medicine, but I held true to my convictions then, and I still do now. Still do now. Flash forward a couple years, and I was at medical school at the University of Minnesota in Duluth, and I really wasn't enjoying it. So I took advantage of the free healthcare we had there and went to the medical center because I just really wanted to talk to somebody, find somebody to talk to. So I had an appointment with a doctor, and I really kind of had I would say not a meltdown. Yeah, a meltdown. I had a meltdown. I was in tears, crying, due to all this uncertainty about what I wanted to do, and feeling really depressed and stressed about my choice to go into Western medicine. Because as I spent more and more time at med school, I realized it wasn't about health. It was more about prescribing drugs. It was more about making money. And instead of telling me that I should find someone to talk to, instead of finding a counselor for me, the doctor just sat there pretty stone-faced as I was having this outpouring of thought and emotion. And the doctor just wrote me a prescription for an antidepressant, passed it on to me. And that was all they had to offer me. Well, I didn't take that drug. I didn't need that drug. All I needed was somebody to talk to. All I needed was a little connection, a little compassion. And I found that by leaving medical school and going my own way, deeper down the so-called rabbit hole. And here I am today. Here I am today. And I'm happy to say I got no blood on my hands. Okay? Since the get-go of this whole COVID situation, I have been calling out all the illogical inconsistencies and, frankly, bullshit coming out of the so-called experts and the medical insurance pharmaceutical cartel. It is a cartel when you think about it. If everybody in this country, how convenient it was that the Affordable Care Act passed and everybody was essentially forced to buy in to the medical insurance pharmaceutical cartel's racket. Sick care. You could call it health care, but they don't really focus on health. See, healthy people don't need doctors. Healthy people don't need drugs. Healthy people don't need, invasive procedures. Where does health come from? Health comes from your lifestyle, nature, nurture. Some of it's genetic, but a whole lot of it has to do with the choices you make every day. And if you look at the whole COVID situation since the get-go, they haven't really, up until recently, they haven't shared any information on how you can actually boost your immunity, how you can actually improve your overall health and make yourself less susceptible, not just to COVID, but to the many diseases that are plaguing humanity right now, many of which are totally avoidable. So your proper diet, exercise, and the like, right? Correct me if I'm wrong, but health doesn't come from a syringe. Health doesn't come from a pill. Health doesn't come from an expert. It comes from our own individual choices day to day. And right now, when you really think about it, all these mask orders and such, they're taking away a health choice. They're taking away a very clear health choice. Your choice to whether you live in fear or live bravely. Your choice of whether you breathe freely or breathe through a face diaper. And the same holds true when we look at this whole push for vaccinations, okay? These are experimental mRNA vaccines, a whole new class of vaccine. And these were, if we trust the mainstream media, they were rushed through development. Now, in my opinion, having looked at the whole grand scheme of things, the whole big picture for more than a decade, I think it's safe to say that these vaccines, not just the COVID vaccines, but a lot of these other vaccines, they weren't rushed through development. And they're not necessarily designed to save you from any specific disease. In fact, they might actually be pretty bad for you. So I encourage everybody out there, think for yourselves, do your own research, and don't let anybody shame or coerce or force you into doing anything against your will. I love all y'all. Take it easy. One love. Peace.